It is 10 o'clock, so welcome to the Economy Overview and Scrutiny panel here being held at Wychavon District Council offices, and we are now live and webcast, so welcome to members and officers. So first of all, agenda item 1 is apologies and named substitutes. We do have apologies from Councillor Alan Bales this morning, and warm welcome and thank you to Councillor Andrew Cross, who is substituting for Councillor Bales, and everybody else who currently serves on the committee is here, noting that we have now 3 vacancies, as Councillor Price has obviously left the committee because he is now in the Cabinet. With that, agenda item 2 is declarations of interest and any of party whip. Does anybody have anything to declare? Councillor Allen.
Yeah, sorry, no, I just want to go back to your first point, if I may, Chair. Could I ask that you consider writing to the Leader of the Council asking that we get these places filled? I think it's very important that they are filled and we do our job properly. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to write to the Leader of the Council, and I have raised it orally, but happy to do so again. So I don't want to debate on this. No. There's no need for a debate on it.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, did you ever get a response?
Well, I raised it orally.
Okay, no response.
Well, other than that they're looking at filling the vacancies. Any declaration of interest? No. Any public participation? No. So minutes have previously been circulated. Are you happy that I confirm the minutes and I'll sign them at the end? Is everyone happy?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Cabinet members have given their apologies.
Yeah, but sorry. Well, there are no cabinet members here because they've indicated they can't come. Sam's just pointed out, but it is us this morning. Agenda item 5. We've got 2 items, substantive items: the budget scrutiny at item 5, and then obviously small towns at item 6. Welcome. We have Steph Simcox here, our Chief Financial Officer, and obviously we've also got usual officers who can assist with this item as well. I'll hand over to Steph in a moment, who will introduce the report. And I guess just a reminder that we are here to focus on budget matters related to our area of scrutiny, i.e. economy, as opposed to the whole plethora of other items that I know all of the other scrutiny committees will have considered. Steph.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, panel. I think what I'll start off by saying is there's a lot of information in the slide deck. It's very important that we give the overall corporate position. But as the Chair has rightfully said, we're here to scrutinise the position relating to economy. Excuse me. And again, apologies to one particular member of the panel who's probably heard this now at least 3 times, if not 4. So what I am proposing to do is to not go through the slides line by line, because you will have heard this at Cabinet, Council and potentially other scrutiny panels. And I am obviously assuming that all the panel members have read the slides and have got their questions ready. But what I want to do is just pick up on a couple of key points, just to make sure that the panel is aware, and also for those watching the webcast, just to be aware that the papers are slightly different to the current position due to some decisions that have already been made by Cabinet and indeed full Council. So I'm looking at the information that starts on page 5 of the printed version, with a picture of, I think it's the Malvern Hills, but I will take other people's advice on what the picture actually is, but it looks like the Malverns to me. So moving down, I am looking first and foremost to page number, and bear with me, page number 14, which is slide number 10, if you've got them printed out, and it's entitled Total of Savings Identified to Date. This was the information that we had prior to the Cabinet meeting on the 13th of January. Since the 13th of January and the 15th of January full council, there has been 2 amendments to this position. Firstly, the administration withdrew the saving relating to car parking charges at the Countryside Centre at a value of 80,000. And secondly, full council voted not to carry on with the savings relevant to the home to school transport unavailable routes. So those 2 savings together total 160,000, and that will be deducted from that 9.145 figure that's on that slide. So the total savings at the moment is 8.945, which is the difference between those 2 numbers. That information will be communicated formally and documented as part of the 5th of February Cabinet report, which is due out next week. The second thing that I just wanted to pick up on particularly is on, and she's going to flicking through her slides very, very quickly, but it goes a little too quick sometimes. Slide number 16, which is on page 20, which is where it's talking about a section 114 notice is not the answer. This has been talked about quite publicly in the press, and I just wanted to pick up on a few key points relating to this. Firstly, it's not legal for a local authority to go bankrupt. It's not possible. It's not in the constitution of any county council, or indeed it's not the government's intention using its local government acts to allow a county council, or any council for that matter, to be bankrupt. It's not possible. However, it is possible for a county council not to have enough money to pay for its expenditure. It's possible for a local authority not to be able to set a balanced budget. And the issues associated with that come in the form of the Section 114 notice. And it's a particular section of the Local Government Act that says, in the Chief Finance Officer's opinion, the council is not able to set a balanced budget, or is not able to maintain a balanced budget during the next financial year, or in his and her opinion, the medium-term financial strategy is not achievable. The things that the county council or any council has to deal with, should that trigger be pulled, is of negative impact really for a county council or any council. No council wants to be in that position. And some of the impacts are quoted on page 20. The government doesn't come in on its white horses with a load of cash in a bag and gives us a load of money. What the government will do is come in and have a look at how the council's run, what the council's doing, how the decisions are being made, and ultimately it will take control over those decisions. So we as officers will still be advising and guiding, but we won't be making any operational decisions. And members will still be members, but they won't have those decision-making powers. Ultimately, that will be central government. So it's a position that none of us want to be in. But my point is, it's not bankruptcy. The council will continue to be able to operate and deliver its vital services for our residents and vulnerable clients. So those are the 2 key things that I just wanted to point out of the slide deck. And with Chair's permission, I'll just now go on to the areas that are relevant to the panel here. And that starts on slide number 19, which is page 23. As you can see within this documentation, this includes the whole of the information relevant to the economy and infrastructure Directorate, as well as skills and investment. Now, this panel is obviously the economy panel, but there's areas within E&I that economy links to. So we give you the whole of the E&I budget, just so that you've got the wider context. But the main areas of scrutiny are in the second line down, where it says economy and sustainability, which is a position that's broadly breaking even this financial year. that area has significant amount of grant income. So if you look at the column on the left-hand side that says gross budget, you will see that that particular department spends just over £4 million. The net budget, which is the amount of money that the county council puts forward, is 768. The difference between those two numbers is the income that the department generates from grants and other sources. So the difference between the gross and the net budget is the income generation that that particular service generates. So a significant amount of the economy area is grant funded. And the other area at the bottom towards the bottom that you will see that's particularly relevant to this panel is skills and investment. And again, you'll see a similar position with a 7.876 million gross budget and a 334,000 net budget. So the resources of the county council that come from council tax, business rates and other central government funding only contributes 334. The service itself generates significant amount of external grants, usually in the form of adult learning grants, but there are other grants within that service. So again, that service is expected to break even by using their grant funding. So the key headlines on the E&I P8 position on slide 20, page 24, is broadly for the areas that are covered by the economy, not by the economy panel, by the environment panel, but I don't see any financial problems within the areas that are covered by the economy panel. Moving on to the next couple of slides, they are how the budget is being set for, or proposed to be set for 26-27. And what you will see within there is the references back to the Cabinet report dated 13th of January. A couple of things that are relevant to this panel within that statement on page 26, slide 22. The Growth Hub grant, this is a central government grant that's fed to us for us to deliver the Growth Hub service, which is used to be and probably still is very closely linked to the work of the Local Enterprise Partnership. Even though we don't get central government funding anymore for the LEP, we do get central government funding for the Growth Hub, which helps to fund our staff and information advice and guidance that we could deliver to our businesses. And we are very pleased that the government is continuing with that grant, and it has increased it by £16,000 in next financial year. Rest of the information on that slide is relevant to the environment panel, so I won't bore you all with that. Slide 23, the information within there is that there are savings in the economy area, totalling 128,000, and these are vacant posts that have been held during this financial year following some restructuring within the service, following bringing the LEP service in, plus the fact that we've got grants now, so we were holding some vacancies in case the grant fell out and we needed to use our own resources to continue some of the work. But as the Growth Hub grant is continuing, we feel that we can release those vacant posts without an adverse impact on the delivery of the service. And as I say, the posts have been vacant for a number of months now. So I think, Chair, that's all I need to say relating to the economy panel, but I'm, as always, happy to take any questions and comments from the panel members. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. I've certainly got some questions to you. So I can't see any hand up. Shall I kick off then? And I'm not sure whether you're going to be best to answer it or whether Gary's going to be best to answer it. So just in terms of the general grant funding, of which, in fact, I think this is in another life, I think lots of this was previously under my area of Cabinet responsibility. So just in terms of the huge external grant funding that we get for economy, and then in particular the nearly £8 million skills grant funding, what's the indication on the funding that we're going to get in 26-27?
Thanks, Chair. The grants in the economy area, and I'll just give you the the highlights that has been given to us from central government so far. Gary will obviously add to it. So the local enterprise partnership grant has ceased. That's gone completely. That went in this financial year. The Growth Hub grant, as I mentioned, has gone up by 16,000. The main areas that we get, I'll come on to skills and investment, but the economy side of things, at the moment we're receiving funding through our district partners from the UK SPF type funding, which has had, well, the government has not indicated that it's continuing. As we all know, there is a requirement to continue supporting businesses, and there's always been some sort of grant. It changes its name, it changes its value, it changes the way it's been allocated. So UK SBF took over from a previous grant that took over from a previous grant. We have not yet been notified of anything that's taking over from UK SPF. So the planning parameters at the moment, and I'm sure a number of you are in the district world, are planning for that grant to cease because we've been given no indications of it, son or daughter of UK SPF coming over the horizon. So that's a difficult decision for a number of districts on how do we continue the excellent work we've been doing without the grant funding to do it. So as far as we're concerned today, there is no alternative coming over the horizon for the UK SBF. Moving on to the skills and investment, these are grants that we receive annually relating to adult learning. These come from the Department of Education as well as the Department for Skills. These are normally academic year related, so the notifications for those will come later because they tend to start as the school year starts. So we're still awaiting any information on them, which the grant that we've got at the moment lasts us until September. So then obviously the next year for them is an academic year rather than a financial year. We have normally received a significant amount of grants through that particular allocation, and the grants are flexible in the fact that we can carry them forward to the next financial year to complete the activity, obviously, because it's financial year versus academic year. So we await notifications on those grants later in the summer, I would expect. But obviously I'll pass over to Gary, who may have more information on some of the specific grants that his services are generating.
Thanks, Steph. Gary, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Steph presents the picture on UK Shared Prosperity funding, which was obviously controlled by the districts, but came into by us working together. We know there's been an extension on any underspends on that, but actually Worcestershire being Worcestershire, and that applies to kind of the districts and us, we tend to spend our money very efficiently, and therefore we assumed that we were having to spend everything by March, so we have. There are some grants that are coming through and not through the local government settlement. What we're seeing is those are slightly less, which is disappointing, but they do fill areas. But at this stage, yeah, we are anticipating a reduction in that kind of external grant level that we will get.
Just while I've got the floor, one final question from me, just looking at the draft budget for 26-27 in respect of those two areas, economy and then skills, in terms of our net budget. I see the proposal is to reduce the net budget in economy by 78,000. So perhaps you could just comment on that and how it's being reduced and what we might be losing, or we're suddenly going to do the same and be more efficient, whatever it is. I know you'll be able to explain, Gary, but ergo, I note that the net funding for skills is proposed to increase by 90k. So perhaps just explain that.
So those vacant posts, or do you want to go, Steph?
I'll just give a bit of a headline on the numbers, and then Gary can say how it's impacting on the service. So if I just go on the economy line, and what I'll do is I'll just explain the numbers going across the line, if that's helpful. So we start off as an opening balance, an opening budget, if you want, of 768. That's the budget we've got today. The minus 16 is the increase in grant. It's a minus. It's just accounting terms. It's the grant coming in, and if you see 3 columns to the right, you'll see the grant going, the money going in as an investment. So we show it as an investment into the budget funded by the grant. So that's why there's a minus 16 and a plus 16. The 66 and the 13 are the inflation factors for pay and contract inflation. And then the minus 157, that's the posts that we mentioned earlier on, which are the 2 posts, 2 vacant posts, plus the prorated amount of the savings on the pension fund. So when we were talking at full council and cabinet about the triannual review of the pension fund, this is the county council's contribution to the pension costs of our current and future pensioners. We make a contribution as a council into the local government pension fund. That contribution value is lower next year than it is this year. So we've made a £2 million reduction in budget. It doesn't mean the pensioners get anything less. It just means our contribution is lower. And we've prorated that out against every single person in the council, basically, which is why economy's taken a proportion of that as a reduction. And then going down to the bottom, you've got very similar things in skills and investment. You've got pay inflation and contract inflation. And then the minus 35 at the bottom for skills and investment is the proportion of the pension fund reduction. So apart from the 2 posts that we've mentioned within economy, there's no other direct savings into that directorate. What there is investment into pay and contract inflation in the normal way.
Thank you. Anything to add, Gary?
No, I don't think so. But obviously, that reflection is where there is a bit of grant money, it's coming into the skills area and not necessarily the business support area.
Got you. Right. Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your report. Appreciate it. Looking at page 24, there's a £0.2 million underspend on road lighting. And this I understand because we've been rolling out LED lighting, which is a really good idea. That isn't going to continue forever, is it? Eventually, we're going to reach the point where we've done all the changes we can make. Do we know when that's likely to happen?
Don't forget we're on economy, Councillor Allen, not road light. Well, that's a very, very, very tenuous, but I'll let you off on this one.
Thanks. There's a programme of street column replacements. You've got those that are concrete columns, and you've got those that are not concrete columns. I wouldn't like to say what they're built from, but the grey ones. What we're doing is obviously replacing all of the need for LEDs. Yeah, we're in a programme. We haven't done them all. There's still a way to go. There's still money in the capital programme to continue. When that's all going to be done, I don't have the answer to that, but I know we're still going. There's not many left to do, but we are still going. We won't be replacing absolutely every one of them. We replace the ones that are felt to be needed to be replaced, and that programme continues. The saving is recurrent, obviously. So the more we do, the more we save. So that £200,000 that we're saving from the current change is recurrent because we've got light bulbs in there that are cheaper and more energy efficient. So that saving continues forever. The next set of street columns that are LED swapped will then generate more savings over and above the 200. But once we've done them all, the saving for all of the LED lights is recurrent.
Thank you, Councillor Bear.
Thank you. I'm glad that Councillor Hart touched on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It's disappointing that it's been cut because, of course, it was the post-Brexit version of the European grants that we used to get. So, you know, had a huge benefit. Now, I know at Wychavon our intention is to essentially fund it internally through our level of reserves. But, of course, not all district councils are in the same position as Wychavon are. Not all district councils will be able to fund that. So, as far as we're concerned, the relationship with county will continue and that we'll be able to continue providing that level of funding. But, as I said, not all district councils will be in the same position, so the likelihood is that the amount that comes into county will be significantly less. So from an internal point of view, what changes are looking to be made within that department to essentially reassess the workload and the ability to carry out that work that the county council will soon have, based on the fact that they won't be able to continue doing the same sort of things that we currently do?
So we've got conversations running with our district council partners in relation to, you're right, each district council will do something different. Obviously, we've kind of boiled that then down to key services, so the Growth Hub, B2Den, obviously the skills across careers, early careers, youth hubs and those kind of bits. I think the conversations at the moment have not concluded, so obviously it's quite difficult to say where will we be, but we are likely to, we'll then reshape the service. I suppose a couple of things that we're probably starting to think about is much of that external grant funding was for us to process and parcel back out the door, in a sense, to businesses. It came through not only UKSBF, but a whole range of routes. Our business support offer will kind of, I suppose, reduce that level of business grant. So that's probably one area we're likely to see less on. We had already started shaping the business support offer to change anyway. So it was very much more about information, advice and guidance so that businesses could implement a change on marketing, finance, their business support, general business advice. And then we have just launched, not that it will fill the gap, but we'd launched a business angels network that would be private sector investment into good business ideas. I wouldn't go as far as Dragon's Den, but certainly that is that general idea, because what we're starting to recognise is those grant pots are reducing and therefore those services that we deliver will come back. So difficult at this point to say what will be the impact, but I think it's definitely what you can see is without that UKSBF money and some of the other grants that we were delivering, that's probably the change in terms of we're likely to be giving more advice, information and guidance with the budgets that we've got rather than kind of grants.
And I think there's a meeting this afternoon with districts, isn't there? Indeed, and I think there's a special leaders meeting next Tuesday afternoon as well to discuss this as well. So I suspect if this meeting was this time next week, Gary might have more of an idea about what he's going to get from his begging bowl to the districts, but just one a time. Dan, did you have a supplementary or not, or you, before I go to Councillor
I will allow Councillor Amar to come in first. I've got a slightly unrelated question.
Okay.
Well, same theme actually. Thank you, Chair. How much is the UK SP funding coming from district exactly, if you have that?
Right, okay, so off the top of my head, so I will come back to you in writing with these figures just to make sure. We approximately, the districts roughly got 5 million, which they then, across all 6 of them, they divided that pot across communities, business and skills. And approximately, which is why I'll come back to you with the specific figures, is roughly it's 1 million for business support and it was 1.5 million for skill support.
So we get 2.5 million.
Roughly.
Yeah. Is there a cut-off date of when the districts should come back? I understand that there's meetings now, but have you...
The districts will go into their budget process a bit like county are,
Yeah.
and obviously that will formulate where we are in terms of that offer. Obviously, we are continuing to talk to our local MPs, government. We are not the only Shire county in this predicament because the UK Shared Prosperity has stopped nationally. Other areas are probably feeling a pinch far more than us because of the way that we've used the team to capture various funding streams. But nevertheless, it's having an impact across the whole country, and that will be assessed, I assume, which is also why I suspect government made the decision to, for those areas who've underspent, to kind of give them a bit more time to spend the money to kind of understand this a bit more. So we will keep having that conversation as part of Worcestershire into government about the impacts of those funding reductions.
One more, please, Chair. It seems that we have a lot of funding streams, and I'm just wondering, is there a list of funds that we could have a look at? And I'm wondering if there are any other funds that may increase the level of funding they give us next year, do you think? To balance it out.
We can. What I would say is this is a movable feast a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate probably, and it was, again, it's a fairly logical assumption to say, oh, everything comes in nice and neatly at the start or end of the financial year, and off you go again. It doesn't kind of happen like that. It depends on ministerial announcements, the budget, both probably in March and the autumn budget. We are currently looking at other opportunities, so there are government opportunities that our decision-making timelines go into the summer around innovation and innovation support. So happy to kind of, again, come back and provide you the kind of the menu of activity and then funding streams and therefore projects that we will be doing. But obviously that is a bit of a moving feast, particularly at this part in the cycle, and not necessarily as easy as an end of year, start of year.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Just looking at the major projects. Now, of course, as it stands with the current financial position, the administration, I'd hope, aren't looking at undertaking any additional major projects on top of those that are already in the work plan. Now, of course, the major part of that team would have been looking at, as the previous administration has come up with more project ideas, sort of understand the feasibility studies, and start to put a plan together. Now, of course, that won't be happening. Now, under the savings plan, of course, there was the reduction in use of private consultants. Now, my concern is, as more and more of these projects in the work plan are completed in the next year or two, we aren't necessarily going to see more projects coming forward, especially not on the same scale given the current financial situation. So the level of workload I would expect within that department would deplete. Now, from your point of view, now I appreciate you've got to protect the team, but surely the use of consultants as the workload continues to diminish is more cost effective than continuing to employ a number of full-time employees to manage a depleting workload. If I've got that wrong, I apologise, but that was my sort of interpretation of it in the current situation.
I'll give a little bit of and then I'll pass on to Gary. There's a couple of points in that is that it's not just the county council's funding that we spend. So central government do give us significant grant funding, mainly in the capital world, yes, but they do give us grant funding. So the major projects team is working on and will continue to work on schemes relevant to capital as well as revenue. We've just received confirmation of funding of over 150 million over the next 3 years for our capital programme from central government relating to highways, local transport, bus services, etc. So although the county council's finances are that it's highly unlikely that we would be doing major projects with the county council's money, it doesn't mean we won't be doing major projects with central government money. So the major projects team, you would think it's just new major projects, but also they are managing and controlling a number of existing major projects like the A38 scheme, Hampton Bridge and others that are continuing. So the next 3 years at least, there's enough major projects going on to maintain the team, and it's not a huge team, but a team nonetheless to manage and control. Some of the, and what I will say is the use of consultants, we use a lot of consultants across the council when we need them, both for capital and revenue. And we are not stopping using consultants where it's more cost effective to do that rather than having a person sitting there all day not having anything to do because they haven't got a project yet to do. So absolutely take your point, Councillor Birch. It's really important that we have the flexibility to be able to use consultants when it's deemed necessary, if it's a particular skill that we don't have internally. You don't always want to be paying somebody 100 grand a year who's got that skill to sit there and do nothing for 9 months of the year. You're absolutely right. The team is extremely well versed in making sure we've got the right people at the right time to do the right thing. And having consultants gives you that flexibility to bring people in and out when you need them. So the reduction in use of consultants, in my knowledge, isn't in the major projects area that you may think, because absolutely you're right, we will be bringing people in and out as and when we need them. The point of the reduction in consultants and having permanent members of staff is where there's a permanent need for the work, but we haven't been able to recruit to people to do that work. So what we are now looking at doing is bringing people in at potentially a lower grade than we would normally do, and train them, development, give them the opportunity to learn from others and kind of grow our own, so that in 2 years' time we've got what we need rather than having to pay for consultants. And I understand that the majority of that is in the planning area rather than in the delivery and major projects area, so it's in the planning team.
I'd probably add, obviously we had Shrub Hill to the last committee, and obviously as Penny is here, it might be worth just giving that as an example in terms of, obviously that's been to Cabinet since, and obviously we're moving forward, that balance between the team and consultant use.
Yeah, thank you. Steph explained the situation very well, actually, and Shrub Hill's a good example of that. So we've brought in over £11 million worth of grants to Shrub Hill, and the majority of the work that's been delivered there has been from grants. So for each of those projects that we've delivered, we have used external consultants. They've been commissioned as part of the delivery of each of those projects. There's been very little revenue spend to deliver those projects from the council. So all the internal resource and external resource has been capitalised against those projects. We have, on occasion, put business cases into Open for Business for some additional support to develop new feasibilities, new ideas before we've secured a grant. So that provision's been there through OFB, but yes, absolutely, has been said. You know, not just Shrub Hill, but other major projects within economy and infrastructure. We use the grant process and the funding of that rather than revenue.
Yeah, because it's perfectly legitimate to capitalise the post in those circumstances, which is what we've done to good effect for years. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this report. And slide 20, printed page 24, the final bullet point about highways operations forecast to overspend due to pressures relating to delivery of vacancy management and also costs of vehicle maintenance. Just wondering if you could help me understand a little bit more about those items and how, you know, are we facing greater costs here than our local comparators in terms of local authorities? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cross. The two things, vacancy management and cost of vehicle maintenance, as I've probably done for every set of questions you've asked me, I'm going to take them in reverse order. The cost of vehicle maintenance is mainly our gritting vehicles. So as vehicles get older, they wear out, a bit like us humans. So what we have seen over the last 12 months is an increased cost of maintaining the gritting vehicles. So we are now looking at, is it more beneficial to buy new vehicles, lease vehicles, rather than keeping, maintaining and repairing the existing ones. So there's a piece of analysis work, for want of a better word, cost-benefit analysis piece of work being done at the moment to lease, buy or continue is the kind of decision that we're making or trying to get the evidence to make at the moment. So that's what the cost of vehicle maintenance is. It's not that we pay more than everybody else, it's just our vehicles are ageing and we need to make a decision quite quickly on what do we do about that. And then the other one, which is vacancy management, the whole concept of this came about a number of years ago, and it's what every local authority tends to do, is if you will always have, well, 99% of the time, you will have a gap between when one individual leaves the council and another one starts. So you look to recruit, somebody's already left, you don't get the new person in, unless you've done some really good planning, you don't get the new person in until after the old person's gone. So there's a gap in between that. And it could be anything from days to 6 months, a year if you can't recruit. And that gap in time normally comes with a saving because you're not paying for the salary of the person that's left or the person that started. In areas like adults and children's, that's often covered by an agency member of staff because there's a statutory need to have a social worker, etc. But in most areas, there is a saving that's made in between that gap. And what we call that is the vacancy management saving gap. So what we do now, again, from the majority of budgets, not all of them, but for the majority of budgets, we budget for 98% of the salary cost of a post. So if a post costs £100,000, we would only have a budget for 98. Because we know that if somebody leaves, there's a gap and it saves us money. So across the whole council, that broadly works cash-wise. Obviously, it doesn't work always in every single cost centre, because if you've got a team of 10 and nobody leaves in a year, you're going to pay for your team of 10. So we know that there's some cost centres, some areas of the business where there's going to be an underachievement and somewhere there's an overachievement. So in that particular team, in Highways Ops, there hasn't been the turnover of staff, which is great because we don't want people to leave. We want them here doing a great job, which they do. But we haven't met the vacancy management target. If you looked at the similar thing for finance, for example, we have had quite a bit high turnover and my team has met the vacancy management target. So I'm overachieving mine, Highways Ops are underachieving theirs. Together, we broadly balance. So as a council, it broadly balances, but some teams don't quite make it and some make more. I hope that's helped to explain that one.
Very clear, thanks, Steph. Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Looking at page 25, and obviously we're talking about the economy, and planning is very important for the economy, certainly with mineral extraction sites and other things coming along. Can you just talk me through that column, planning and regulation, please?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the opening budget is the 2.170 million as we've got now to deliver our planning and regulation service. We have the 61,000, which is the pay inflation for the staff that work within that team. Currently estimating 3% for pay. That may be different, but we're budgeting for 3%. And then the minus 153 is the proportion of the savings relevant to the pension fund reduction. So, as I mentioned earlier on, every cost centre's got a proportion reduction for pension fund savings, which is not impacting on delivery of service. So there's very little amendments in the planning and regulation. Most of the budget really goes on staffing. So that's why you've got an investment in the staffing. The contracts within that area are pretty static with very little inflation, And the other the big part of that is obviously the consultancy budget that we were talking about earlier on. So there is obviously the consultancy budget as and when we need it.
Thank you. Councillor Amar.
Do the cost centres correlate with these departments, or are there more cost centres? Just for finance, yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
Oh, sorry.
Some areas there's probably 1,000, I'm exaggerating. Some areas there's probably 20 cost centres that make up that. Some areas there's 10. It's how the budget manager wants to be able to account for the different units that they might have. So I'll use my own, I'll use my own example because I can talk about it easier than I can talk about Gary's, and then he can talk about his own. So with underneath my service, I've got 6 teams. So I will have 6 cost centres because I want to be able to manage the staffing and on costs, etc., of my 6 teams individually, and then I will hold my 6 managers to account for delivering their budgets. So I want them over 6. And I'm one of 7 managers underneath the Chief Finance Officer. So he will have my service with 6 cost centres, but then he'll have a number of other managers with a number of other units. So in the line that says finance, you've probably got about 25 cost centres. In the line that says HR, the manager might want to only see it as human resources, organisation development. So she may have 2, she may have 22. It depends on how they want to see and manage the operations of their services. So the easy answer is it depends. The fewer cost centres, the easier forecasting is because it's all in one. I call them buckets. It's not a bucket, but it's a bit like, do you put all your savings in one account, or do you have like the old-fashioned? I remember Granny used to have a jam jar for a gas bill, a jam jar for an electric bill. You split it all out, and you can manage it better. But if you have 42 jam jars, you haven't got a clue what's in what. So it's to the needs of the business.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands, so that's given a good airing to a discussion on the budget, particularly for our area of economy. So I guess, Sam, you've been making notes. Are you happy that you've clear that you've got a substance? So you're trying to canter through what you've noted down, and then we can just agree.
Members wish to add. So, noting the initial thing about car parking charges and home to school transport and available routes, the changes to the budget there.
Yeah.
Areas relating to economy are broadly breaking even, and the panel noted there's significant grant income in this area. Please, the government have provided a grant through the Growth Hub, and it's been increased. There are savings of 128,000 relating to vacant posts following some restructuring and bringing LEP services in-house. Historically, this is all about the UK SPF, historically received funding from UK SPF from district partners, and you're unsure if this will continue, and that conversations are happening with district council partners about future funding opportunities, and also we're lobbying government about the impact of the funding reductions.
I'm going to interrupt you there, Sam, because it's relevant to you. I don't know whether the panel feel we ought to be slightly stronger and use some wording that we note our disappointment that UK shared prosperity funding is to cease, because although it went to districts, it's cascaded for the activity of the county. So if everyone, I can see nodding, so can we just say that we note our disappointment because we recognise the benefit from the activity that the UK shared prosperity funding can make.
Sure.
I'm tempted to say, and brackets, because not all districts are as wealthy as Wychavon, and they might not be able to lob the money in. But
okay.
Dan's ignoring me, or he wasn't listening. You see.
Regarding skills and investment, the grant funding is received in line with the academic year, and so we're still waiting on that one. And then reference to the employees' pension contributions. I hadn't quite finished that sentence, but I will add a little bit in about that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Anything else? I think
to
that's
add?
probably encapsulates
Is that
it.
all right?
Fine. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Steph. Thank you for coming. Is everybody happy to go straight into the next item, or would you like a comfort break for 1 minute or 2 minutes? Should we have a 2-minute break as we're ahead of schedule? So for the viewers at home, we'll just pause the webcast while we have a 2-minute comfort break. So, welcome back, and the next agenda item, item 6, is on small towns, which of course we, a number of meetings back, asked for this to go on the work programme, and here it is. So, thank you to Gary and the team, and welcome to Scott Riddell, and obviously we've got Penny Unwin for this item as well. So, I think what I will do, without further ado, is invite Gary and in fact I think Scott's going to speak first of all, aren't you? Or well, I'll hand over to Gary and he can say what he'd like to say, and we'll then ask questions and make comment.
I'll start and then I'll pass to Scott. Obviously, small towns, one of the conversations that we had with you, Chair, and the Vice Chair was actually let's get a definition, because we might feel in Worcestershire all our towns are small, or actually all our towns are quite big, depending on your point of view. So we've put out a definition of population, obviously 5,000, 25,000, and also we put in a rule because certainly there are areas in the north of the county that would come into that population number, but actually they haven't really got a retail hub or a core. So appreciate, again, members of the panel might want to kind of question us on other areas, but nevertheless that was a definition we've gone for. Number 5 on the report obviously gives you then the list of towns that we've looked at. The other point I would make is around, obviously this area does kind of flit between the district councils and their some statutory planning powers, and also their kind of place shaping piece. But obviously as county, we come in behind supporting the district in terms of, that place shaping and how does that work. So the report that I'm going to pass over to Scott to just give some headlines through. We've talked to the districts and given them a sort of a conversation with them about what does that mean for those towns in terms of perhaps future and those kind of things. And then we've tried to kind of package that together where, for example, say tourism, although we deliver on a county-wide basis, particularly then, I'm going to pick on Upton, but the Jazz Festival and big events, obviously the tourism team then get involved. But happy to hand over for Scott to give any other highlights that he wishes to.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Chair, and thanks to panel and to Councillor Allen in particular for giving me the opportunity to explore this area and to look at some of the excellent work that goes on, as Gary said, both at county and at district level. And we hope what comes across sort of strongly in the report is the fact that both the County Council and the districts do recognise their responsibilities in this area, listen to the concerns of residents and business owners, and then also take practical steps to develop town plans and business support schemes at county level. I met with my district counterparts in Wychavon, Malvern and Wyre Forest in the writing of this report, and a recurring theme that comes through from those discussions was the recognition that town improvements rely largely on partnership working. There's a number of different stakeholders involved in making our towns thrive and making our towns a success. Partners are realistic in some of the challenges and the limitations that our towns have. Many towns share similar issues: car parking, traffic management, buildings that are empty, derelict, or certainly in need of regeneration. And indeed, many of the sites that are identified in the district's town plans are currently in private ownership. So again, we'll require that partnership piece to move them forward. Not wishing to sort of vibe on a trend that's already been raised this morning, but my meetings also reveal concerns over future funding streams to ensure that these good projects remain. UK SPF was mentioned at length, particularly in Malvern and Wyre Forest, not so much in Wychavon, as Councillor Birch has already mentioned this morning. But if there isn't any succession funding, then some of the projects identified in my report will eventually cease. The support of town events, some of the nice sort of tarting up of town centres, if you like, they'll no longer have the funding to do some of that good work. And whilst we appreciate that's beyond the scope of panel and indeed the scope of this report, we find that it's important to highlight it because it will be an important factor in the future of what happens. Nevertheless, you know, a lot of good work's gone into the production of the plans and the support schemes that run at county level, and there's clearly a lot of passion and goodwill from those that are involved that want our towns to thrive. And the town plans are long term. They are subject to changing priorities, and I think perhaps Councillor Morris says it best in the promotional video that Wychavon produced to support their prospectuses, when he says these are more of a vision, a guide, if you like, for the future, and they will evolve as funding streams and administrations and as priorities change. So I do hope you've had a chance to look at the report. Gary, Penny and I are available to answer any questions or take any comments that the panel may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions, so please stop me and perhaps I'll come back a bit later when you've had enough of me speaking. But thank you very much for your report. I do appreciate it. The first thing, you've said on page 29 that you've looked at small towns between 5,000 and 25,000 residents. Well, Upton's smaller than that. I think it's the smallest town in Worcestershire. I don't think it has, 5,000 residents, more like 2,500, just to sort of just point that out. It's in there, yes, but it suddenly seemed to have doubled in size. So, going on to page 33, could you explain towards the bottom? You've been working with the council to undertake options appraisal for HGV management in the town, and this is regarding Upton upon 7. Can you explain a little bit more about that, please?
Just in terms of, we work with we work county-wide really in terms of HGV routes and HGV parking facilities. So it will be on that basis where we're working, and it's probably with Malvern Hills District, to kind of look at those routes and make sure there are those facilities for HGV parking and obviously facilities for the drivers. So it's probably part of that wider programme.
Okay, I mean, sorry, go on.
No, sorry, Councillor. It's one of the discussions. I met Simon Smith in Malvern. It was one of the priorities that came out of the Upton Town Plan that was approved by Malvern Town Council in 2022. I was quite surprised to hear that HGVs go through the centre of Upton, to be honest. But they've looked at it as a priority, and they are working with county and district to try and do something about it. But how much success they're going to have remains to be seen.
They can't. The Police and Crime Commissioner has been down. I've had him down, and he said no, they won't divert the A4 unfortunately, and won't use the Handy Road instead. So I don't think that unfortunately is an option, though I wish it was. And you've also mentioned there about the County Council Environment Agency considering scheme options for flood alleviation. Now, we've done that in the past. What's really left, really, is the Hanley Road. Now, are you aware that I managed to get a full costings and set of engineering drawings drawn up for the raising of the Hanley Road after a number of meetings, including with our MP and the Upton Town Council, and we were looking at just over £9 million to do it, which wasn't the problem. The problem was that the road was going to have to be closed for the best part of a year, which would destroy the trade. But are you aware of that those documents exist?
No, I wasn't, but thanks for bringing them to my attention.
Yeah, if you drop me an email, I'll send them to you. That's not a problem at all. Going back onto page 29, what more can the County Council do to help small towns such as Upton? Upton is struggling. It punches above its weight. There are empty shops. I fear we might lose another pub this year. I'm hoping that won't happen, but I have some concerns. I won't name the pub. And I'm just conscious with LGR coming, it is going to probably fall on us, or certainly you. I would assume you'll still be here after LGR. I hope you will, but I expect you all will be, to be quite honest. What plans are we making for the next 10 years for our small towns to actually help them? Because we don't start making them now, in 10 years' time, they may not be around.
I'd probably back reference is, at the moment, those kind of forward plans and investment plans are very much with the districts. We then play into those in terms of, how do they kind of how do the county functions play into that? So whether it's tourism, which is obviously non-statutory, but obviously we will, through Visit Worcestershire, then promote events, town events. You know, there's a What's On guide as part of Visit Worcestershire. And then probably then back to kind of through highways and transport and the planning elements around, and the kind of view of the high street and those statutory functions around, you know, kind of repaving and those kind of bits. I think in terms of town centre management, I think the district and us and then the town council working together is that bit. The other bits we can do are around business startup, encouraging retail. I think it's Evesham that definitely work with their business sector to kind of encourage new retail startups and to support them in terms of business planning and the way that they work. So I think it's probably not just county. LGR will definitely have an impact on this area because suddenly that partnership between the district and the county, it'll be one council over whatever area or two councils over the whole. Whichever council has got control of that, then it will be having to, I think, develop these things because they'll be the things that are important to residents. So, which is why it probably doesn't feel like a straight answer in terms of what is the county council doing, because I think probably Scott's presentation was right. It is going to be a partnership, and I see that kind of, that's the way that this will develop going forward beyond, well, now and then 2028 and then beyond.
Okay, thank you. So, could I ask then for more involvement with the local county councillor, because I don't feel, and perhaps other county councillors feel the same, that they're not involved as much as they would like to be regarding when you're talking to the district councils, etc.
I think it's a conversation we can have back with our districts. I know they've got kind of town forums, and this is where it just depends, but I'm sure that our district council partners and through us, we're quite happy to make sure that, yeah, our county council is engaged and involved.
Councillor Marr, then Councillor Cross.
Thank you very much for this report. I was very disappointed to see that Bromsgrove is nowhere on there because obviously it's bigger than the report. But so if we were looking at all these towns that you've seen and all these ideas that you've collected, could you give us a couple of, you know, pointers, please?
Yeah. So this is where we've defined the report, but actually we know in our larger towns, let's call them that. So we have participated in terms of county council officers from a range of departments, working with districts, to look at a similar process for Bromsgrove Town Centre. I think some of the ideas that came out of that were very much how does Bromsgrove as a kind of destination improve the people coming out to it, and why would they come? So I think there are a couple of themes that kind of run around what are events that then bring people to the town. So if you can look at examples, Droitwich and the recent Rick Mail Comedy Festival brought over 60,000 people into the town. So, but I think each town's got to find its kind of niche. My thing for Bromsgrove would definitely be the food offering, that link, and very much around arts and crafts, because people will look to come out of the conurbation and visit Bromsgrove. They'll look at that kind of fresh air. So each town's got to find its niche and unique selling point, which is always quite hard, but it is a partnership then between that business community and those kind of bits. I think we are always willing to participate. In fact, this month, I think Redditch is going through the same process. I know Kidderminster has, and we very much are trying to work up those local things that I think go across a number of themes around connectivity, parking, transport, but also arts, tourism, and the offer. And I think you've kind of got to take your independent businesses with you. But obviously we've linked at the top of the report some of the pressures that make that difficult. But I think people do want local provenance, and people do want to see, where they can go to experience something different than an out-of-town shopping facility, let's just say Solihull, or to the south of us, Tewkesbury has just opened. You know, those are very kind of out-of-town convenience, but actually people still like to spend their time having a look at the independent, and you know, often eating and drinking becomes quite. So the town centres that were markets have kind of moved into far more social and leisure activities.
Thanks, Gary. Councillor Cross next, then Councillor Birch, then Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, really interesting to see this report and the attention paid to economic challenges of small towns in the country. I'm just thinking, there are several, within our county, there are several large housing estates which do have a retail core, some with populations greater than, say, that of Pershore. And I'm just wondering, if the primary thing is about economic activity and benefits/disbenefits to residents, for example, and demographic shifts towards ageing populations, fit those in together, and we start getting some interesting pictures of needs that perhaps local members are aware of, but there isn't the eyes on within the strategic eyes of our authority. So just wondering if there is scope for looking into that, exploring that. If it's relevant or not relevant, please let me know.
I think those types of, so where I'm thinking of is certainly around some of the Redditch large areas where you have got a small retail area, or probably in Worcester. I think it comes back to whose responsibility is it. It probably lands more with the districts rather than with the county at this point, recognising that although if it becomes back to transport issues, then yeah, it's a conversation and it's about prioritisation. So I just think in terms of the report, we had to draw the line somewhere, and I think the wider you draw the line into, well, could it be Warndon and the kind of retail offer within there, or some of the Matchborough and some of the things around Redditch, it sort of becomes quite difficult to then kind of bring it back, because I didn't ask the last question, which was about benchmarking. There is a lot of benchmarking that you can do around vacancy numbers, around types of retail offer, around the amount of retail space. Obviously, lots of issues come back to also, can we get people to live in the town centres? All that data can kind of come in, but I suppose at some point you've kind of got to work out what are you going to actually do. And I suppose, dare I say, that's then back to the challenge of the money, which as we're seeing is kind of reducing back. So I do think I'd be careful about scope, I think, would be my answer to Councillor Cross's question.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you very much. 2 questions, if you don't mind indulging me. First and foremost, I'm slightly biased sitting on the Wychavon Exec Board, but I truly do believe that Wychavon lead the way in terms of their economic development and investment across Worcestershire. I believe that things like the Place Board initiatives have been absolutely excellent, and I mean it with the greatest respect. I think the purpose of the Place Boards is bringing councillors, but more importantly community members together, so local business owners, people who are involved in local community groups, to come up with useful and productive ideas in terms of how we can produce a town. And I don't think those sort of organisations you can have in a centralised organisation like the county council or even district councils, because it's almost too high up. Some of the stuff that the Place Boards have done in Droitwich, for example, it's things like additional planters, street art projects. They've ran bike nights across the town. They've helped us get a banking hub in the town, and that's because of the level of community engagement and the contacts that they have that organisations like us simply wouldn't have at that sort of ground level. And similarly, in terms of the events, in Evesham, you've got the Battle of Evesham. Mick Hurst, who organises that, sits on the Evesham Place Board. That attracts 60,000 visitors to Evesham. The Rickmail Comedy Festival, that attracts 60,000 visitors to Droitwich. That's a huge, huge level of visitors coming to very small towns in the grand scheme of things. And ultimately, I think part of that has also helped in terms of the investment at Wychavon that we've had in place-based working officers. So each of the towns has a dedicated officer there to support. People in the community know who they are, the local businesses know who they are, and ultimately they're there to provide any sort of advice over little things. They help with setting up events. I run a local CIC where we run community events in Droitwich. Witchaven will sort out our risk assessments for us. They'll cover the cost of road closure licences. They'll cover the costs of first aiders for certain events. They cover all those menial costs that ultimately add up to about £800 overall to put on these community events. And that's all funded through what was UK SPF, soon to be Witchaven grants. So my question is around, from a county council point of view, what more can the county council do to support those sort of local organisations running events, to support in terms of getting more events into the towns? Because in my view, the best way to attract people into our towns and even larger villages is by those sort of community events. People who don't usually come out, the best way we can get them out is providing an alternative, a different offering. So what more is the county council able to do to support in delivering that?
I'm not going to address your first bit, which was Witchaven's the best district at doing this, because I think that will get me into trouble, certainly with the chair, if nothing else. I think in terms of county, obviously, what we can help with, I would probably say, directly, is the easy offer of kind of promotion of some of those. The Visit Worcestershire piece, is the sort of tourism offer, and you think, oh, well, that's about visitors from outside, but it's surprising actually how many visitors we have from inside the county as well. And I wouldn't lose that, trying to find a what's on, even at local level, becomes quite hard at that level, but at county level, we are providing at least at that attempt that appeals to the visitor and the internal visitor, that they can find out and experience some of these things. So I think we are doing what we can, but I think this is also back to this balance of, the district and Witchaven and the town is providing that role. To some extent, county doesn't need to get too involved and just needs to support where it can, and what how does that work through to make sure that we're, I suppose, all in those ambitions of what the town and what the district want to deliver. So any examples where that's not working, I think we're always happy to take those away. But generally speaking, that's I think the challenge of this report for a county scrutiny panel is a lot of the work is done at that level, and that's where it should sit, and rightly so.
Well, you've both stolen my thunder there. Councillor Birch's questions were very much in my mind as well, as I was thinking after hearing the report, reading the report and hearing the other officers speak about it. And then Gary's comments to that is that I think we would have been helped today if perhaps tourism had been represented as well today from Worcester Council. I do think there could be a brand issue here for the whole of the county, but of course we are in unusual times now, sitting on the edge, if you like, of the districts and where we are with unitary. But certainly I do see that, and from my own personal experience, Droitwich has proved very successful in attracting people into their events. So events bias, but there are 2 points to this as well. There is a retail footfall that we need to encourage, and that's lacking in a number of areas. And I do take the comments about Bromsgrove as well on board there with that. I do see the problems that Bromsgrove has that could be addressed, and there are some very good success stories coming out of some of the areas. So perhaps it's just the case, the usual thing is get people in a room and don't leave until you've got a blackboard full of good ideas that can be echoed throughout. But I do think there's a branding thing that could be done here throughout many of these small towns to bring them together and to share their success stories and the things that don't work as well. So really, there's no magic bullet here. This is echoed up and down the country, I believe, to a large extent. But I do see it within our own little corner of England here with that. But as I say, Councillor Birch and Councillor Woodman's, comments there. Sorry, Gary's. I am demoting you there, Gary. Yeah, Gary's comments here they are grist for the mill, really. So that's what I would say, Scott. Thank you for just listening.
Thanks, Councillor, and again, thanks, Councillor Birch. I live in Droitwich, so I'm not going to dispute what either of you have just said there. But I think I mentioned the promotional video at the very top of the piece that Councillor Morris led on, and what Whichehaven do really well is they set the scene from the get-go. So Droitwich is immediately identified as a spa, as a brine town. Pershaw's immediately identified as a sort of welcoming place for independent kind of creative thinkers. And then the video and then the plans kind of build on there. So when you're talking about the identity piece, Whichehaven kind of nail it from the get-go. And maybe to answer the question from Councillor earlier on about that identity piece, what I think all three areas I've started from is a bit of a resident and business questionnaire. What's wrong here? What do you want to see? And then they've taken those themes, they've kind of grouped them, and the outcome of that have been the strategic objectives and then the projects that sit underneath that. And then what Whichehaven particularly have done is they've attacked the meaty ones first. So Droitwich, Raven Hotel, Evesham, Riverside Shopping Centre, the kind of the difficult ones, but also what they call the kind of the game changer sites are the ones that they've got their teeth into first. And that comes across clearly in like I say, the video and then the plans sort of behind it. But no, it's a good point, so thank you.
I'll probably make a number of comments now, and then I'll bring Councillor Birch back in. I see Councillor Amar is indicating, I'm perhaps prepared to concede that Councillor Birch and Whichehaven might be the exemplar for the south, but certainly from the north I'll perhaps pick on some of the Wyre Forest experiences. And I think my take on this report, and thank you very much for bringing this report, is, without stating the blindingly obvious, we live in a very diverse county. And each town, even our small towns, are of varying sizes and have various differing offers. And I think I agree with Gary's take on this. And, from someone who's served on both a district and a county for over 20 years, county is the bigger, higher strategic body. And a lot of this work, to me, sits with districts. Now, we'll be going into new territory in due course, 2027, 2028. We don't need to get in debate whether we have one unitary or we have two, but of course it ultimately will be a unitary. And a key for me is the town councils, because we should really think local, and particularly when we move to unitary, there is a huge role for the town councils, because a lot of this can be done on the ground, because ultimately, town councillors are usually the lifeblood of their local community, and they live there, and they've lived there for a long time. Town councils, and indeed parish councils, but we're talking about small towns, don't have capping on their precepts in the same way that districts and counties do, and therefore I genuinely and firmly believe that at a local level you're in a much greater position to shape your own future by funding some of these great activities and supporting organisations with events, carnivals, festivals, markets, all the rest of these things. And I accept it's a struggle for them, and I'll just comment on the challenges perhaps between large and small towns, for example. I'm probably lucky being the leader of the district council wearing that hat, because I've got three towns, Stourport and Bewdley, which are categorised as smaller towns, and Kidderminster quite rightly isn't in this because it's a much larger town. The larger towns, and I'll pick on Kidderminster as a great example, where, and the district does have a vision, a rewire vision. In fact, we had a state of the area debate just to refocus on our vision for Wyre Forest just some time before Christmas, and Gary came along to it, businesses and all key stakeholders, etc., to set out, because that's really important to have a vision. But the bigger towns, and Kidderminster has really benefited from external grant funding, and that's where counties played its part. When we had the two LEPs, for example, in Wyre Forest, we're in the GBS LEP and the Worcestershire LEP, we were able to hoover millions of pounds worth of investment for public round work and highway infrastructure work right in the heart of Kidderminster town centre. That kind of money wasn't available for the smaller towns because it's not got the scale. And you look at the Future High Streets Fund money, you look at the Levelling Up Fund money, you look at the UK Shared Prosperity Fund money. Kidderminster Town Hall's had an £11 million makeover as a result of Prosperity Fund money. We bought what was called the piano building and have refurbed that. out of grant money, our old magistrates court and indoor market, which we've been trying for 20 years to get the private sector to invest in, wouldn't because it wasn't viable. We used Future High Streets town money, new urban park in the town out of Future High Streets money to change the shape of the centre. So over £40 million worth of external government money in a town. But regrettably, the smaller towns haven't been able to tick those boxes. So I think there's something there, not for town districts or county. That's something for government to think about, because residents and taxpayers would say to me, "Oh, you put all this money into Kidderminster, Marcus. What about Stourport?" Well, I'd love to have £40 million to spend on Stourport, etc., etc. So I think there is a point to be made there. And just very parochially on Wyre Forest, just for a moment. I think one of the key things in the investment in Bewdley, and it's touched upon, I think it says, flooding remains a major concern for residents and business owners. Well, it acknowledges that the flood defence work has now been completed. I don't really think it is. I don't think it is such a concern now, because if we have flooding, we know that we're protected by temporary barriers the one side and permanent barriers the other side, and that's a real example, a practical example, I think, of how county can help in small towns. Because yes, of course, the Environment Agency had to allocate the £9 million of cash for that project, lobbying from the local MP and all the work he did, of course. But county clearly had their role to play in the highways element of that, which was, of course, profoundly disruptive for the 18 months of the build period, but highly successful now. So I think that would probably be my take on it. Much more district focused, but equally, I think town councils have really got a huge part to play in shaping their own destiny. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. My second question was around the public rail works. And for example, Droitwich High Street was mentioned in terms of it had a resurfacing back in 2017, 2018, so it lost its cobbled effect and essentially became a pavement, so it was safer, it was more accessible, it was easier for people to travel along. But ultimately, they tried pedestrianisation down Droitwich High Street at one point. They tried it for a few months and it didn't work out. Bromsgrove, on the other hand, has gone for pedestrianisation and does have a pedestrianised high street. My point has always been, I've been fully against pedestrianisation of Droitwich High Street. I've always thought it was the wrong thing to do. We had a business group and they were against it. They always said it's the wrong thing to do for things like the cobblers, the butchers, the shops that people run in and out of. Being able to park directly outside made it easier for them to use those shops. From the county council's point of view, is there anything that sort of backs it up that by not pedestrianising the high street, we are actually supporting businesses? And while pedestrianisation may make it more accessible, actually makes it less accessible to those who do have severe mobility issues and can't necessarily walk, or those businesses that do rely on dropping in and out customers.
I think you're right in terms of it's a case by case basis. There's no question that, if you look at Worcester, I know we're going into the county town, but and the city, but obviously pedestrianisation there really works because you've got areas of the city where you can park on the edge, or equally you can use public transport to get in and do all those kind of things. But what I would then say is, yes, many of our smaller towns actually rely on that. Somebody being able to pop in, being able to kind of park easily, because when you look at the list of pressures, one of them is actually that out of town development where people just go for convenience. So I think the more that, although some might argue by creating the pedestrianisation that and moving the car out of the town is obviously desirable, but I think it then is that balance between convenience. So I think each of the towns, we would, whoever would be looking at this in the future, would consider that on a case-by-case basis. I think in some cases it works really well. In some cases, actually, the function of that town in that locality is it draws people in and it's vital to the businesses in that area. So I think it depends on a case-by-case basis of where pedestrianisation works and where it doesn't.
Councillor Marr, then Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much. There's a lot been said here today, and I'm just trying to mull over how we move forward from here. is there scope for creating the same document on parishes, but only a couple of parishes as a sample size from each district, that councillors could tell us which ones they prefer? Because, as we said earlier, Bromsgrove district has parishes but not towns, and these areas do have high streets, do have retail, do have pubs, etc. So I was wondering if we could choose a couple and study them. And I like the idea of sort of Councillor Edmund's idea of having a list of what worked and what didn't work, so the to present to the districts, to give to the districts, so at least we can help them move forward. I do really, I am very impressed with what Wychhaven has done, and I will take on board everything that's been said. Of course, the Lido was a very successful project, and I loved the fact that they created stories. If you go into the Lido, they tell you that the members of the public actually voted to fund it, not by 98%. So it's just such a successful story, and I'd love to see, part of business is benchmarking. I'm a very big fan of benchmarking, what worked really well and how we can adopt it to other areas. So I suppose my first question is, could we replicate this on a parish level for areas that haven't been covered, but only on a sample size? Otherwise, your report will be 1 million pages long. And second of all, is there scope now to, after we see that report, to create sort of a list of what worked, really successful stories in the county that perhaps we could present to gift district councils, and it's up to them to enact it or not? Thank you.
Gary.
I think in terms of parishes, I think, yeah, that upfront criteria was actually really helpful when we agreed that with the chair and the vice chair, because obviously it is a report that, as we've kind of seen, it can spread into quite a whole range of things, and as we've seen, the questions have gone through quite a range. So we can, and if you want to put that on the work programme, we can obviously schedule that in. I think, yeah, we could draw back in terms of what works well. There are things like the town association in terms of like a national trade body, and we can start to draw in some of that. I think it would be a shared kind of, lessons learned, best practice document between us and the districts, and maybe it's helpful then to have that on a sort of file as we go through, obviously, local government reorganisation, because who ends up with certain bits, who knows, and do we end up with one or two and all those kind of issues. But just having that, probably that guide of, what works well, or equally what doesn't, because sometimes understanding the pitfalls are just more helpful than understanding what does work well. So I think we could put those two together as an outcome of this report if the panel choose.
Thanks, Gary. And just before I bring Councillor Allen in, just while you're on that theme, just thinking about it, whether there's anything to be done with Worcestershire Calc, who, in terms of harness all the parish and town councils, they may have some information and some data and some good practice sharing that we can work with and bring that alive as well.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, the more we can enlighten from our parish councils their good work as well, all the better. But I think the point around there are quite a lot of them is a good one as well.
Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, can I just support you in your suggestion? I think it's a really good idea that we look at a number of the small parishes, and I'll obviously push Upton as a very small town council parish to be looked at. But you're right. I think you were saying, Chair, earlier about LGR, and I agree with what you said. And it's really a request, and perhaps for the panel to consider, that once we know what's happening with LGR, I think it would be useful to bring this subject back to this panel, because then we will have a firm idea which way we're heading. And I think we then need to try and do everything we can to help the new unitary authority, hopefully give them probably both, yeah. So, moving forward, we can really do something for our small town. So could we consider that, please, Chair?
Hold that thought, because we'll do that at the next item in the work programme, but I'm alive to that, and I think I'll bring something in about Calc as well. Anybody else got anything else to comment or ask on small towns? No, in which case, thank you very much indeed for that item. So that we'll turn straight into agenda item 7, which is our work programme. And Sam, I think we've got the next meeting in March populated, haven't we? And then just looking at June, we have got Malvern Hills Science Park, and then will we have the usual budget and performance then or not, Sam? Or are we looking for another item for June? Just so I'm clear, I've got it.
We have Malvern Hills Science Park and Worcester 6.
Worcester 6 is
Or was it Growth Hub and Worcester 6?
No, we've got Worcester 6 and Growth Hub in March,
Okay.
and the performance budget monitoring.
Is that still okay?
Because it's July.
Right, yeah. So we've got Malvern Hills Science Park at the moment for June.
Add another item there.
We could, and I think that in terms of bringing this item back to look at parishes effectively and small parishes, and the point that we need to, I think, probably await the outcome of LGR to know what our destiny is going to be to an extent. The timeline for government currently is that they'll make an announcement between after the May local elections and July, which I suspect is any time between May the whatever day is after the elections and the summer recess, and I suspect it'll probably, as these things do, come close to the summer recess. So I don't think that there's any point that item coming back until at least the autumn, either a September or November meeting in reality. So we can definitely bring it back, and it would be my proposal, subject to what everyone else has got to say, and Gary, that it might be helpful to have a representative from Calc invited to the meeting to give evidence and support and be able to inform what work they do in respect of this area, if people are happy.
Yeah, that's
What's his name? Chris, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can't remember his surname, but anyway, it's Chris. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, totally support what you said. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Looking back out on the 10th of June, when we'll be discussing Malvern Hills Science Park, will we be inviting from Malvern Hills District Council Ian Edwards, who I think could probably help with that, and maybe Simon Smith.
Gary?
It's the way it divides, my understanding on officer-wise, is it's probably Simon and not Ian, but we'll let them decide who can attend. But yeah, more than happy that there's a district colleague on our side of the table to help answer some of those questions that no doubt the panel will.
Thank you. I think it would be very helpful to this.
Good. Anything else we want to add to the work programme for now? Well, we've got plenty of time because we've got March populated and we've got one substantive item for June. So please do have a think and we can think about populating the items for the autumn, if you're happy with that, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, there's nothing else, is there? So with that, at 11:39, I shall formally close the meeting. Thank you very much indeed.